today's environment with AI accelerating the speed of innovation, it is kind of crazy, right? I think every learning professional, face-to-face person or a technologist like myself, our joy, right? The true joy in our lives come from when you're seeing people blossom. Those comments on that YouTube channel for the kids to say, and now get this concept, 5 minutes my teacher's been trying to explain for the last 2 years. Those are the moments of joy that we get.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My guest here today is Steve Dineen, who is president at Fuse Universal. Steve, I'm so happy to have you here today.
Excellent. I'm happy to be here.
Tell everyone a little bit more about Fuse, what you guys are all about, who you help, and what's the journey been so far throughout these many, many years.
So I guess so. I'm a person that has two passions. One is helping people develop through learning, and the other technologies. It wasn't too hard to think that to get me into a place where the last 20 years of my life in multiple companies has been to try to drive that passion. First company was more of a content creation company. Used to build a lot of custom courses for a lot of big Fortune 500 clients, trying to take great knowledge at people's heads and make it available to other people. And that was great, right? But the format at the time was these typical kind of corporate e-learning courses, right? And I found it really hard to get through one of those myself. And I figured if we're winning awards for being the best or the least worst, there must be a better way to learn, right? So I think, with Fuse Universal, I think we've really said about that, saying how do you create something where people would choose to want to learn, both from a platform perspective and experience perspective, and also helping our clients and guide them on the content side. So I think that's hopefully what we've achieved. And ultimately, I think maybe the last thing, I'm a talker, I know I've got to work on that, right? But at least I'm on the right place.
It is.
I think on that final piece towards it, right? I think the measurement of success is interesting, right? Because in the old world of learning, it used to be, if somebody's done my course, then I've succeeded, and somehow we're going to connect lots of people finishing courses and try to connect that with a business outcome. And today it's super interesting on platforms like ours, which are, kind of hyper user focused. And it's more about that social media metric of YouTube style, Instagram. Sure. Are people choosing to come back to the platform, and the people who have that habit of learning, do they perform better on the things that businesses care about?
Awesome. And just in case for the viewer, if they haven't been able to gauge for themselves yet, you're helping companies do these things. So talk to me a little bit more about how that actually functions and what they're exactly looking for to be able to run that internally within their teams.
Yeah, so I think there's two bits. So 95% of my work is on the corporate side. We have a charity which is more on YouTube, where we have actually digitized the secondary school education system, maths and science. They have 10 million kids a year that are using that content to learn maths and science, and that's kind of that's our gift back, if you like, and that's the weekend job. But the main day-to-day side and the corporate side is, I guess initially my vision, 10, 12 years ago, right, was putting together YouTube and LinkedIn to create a different way to learn. So how do you easily extract the knowledge out of the experts in people's heads? Because what became evident is people learn best from people like them and the people they really respect, mainly in the company, but sometimes outside. So I really wanted to tap into that to say, how do you create that same type of YouTube, LinkedIn style experience in the outside world and bring that into organizations that have private instances that are able to easily capture that knowledge, share that knowledge, access it when they need to, and recognize that learning is more than simply going through a course, which by the time you finish that book online, you probably started to fade away a lot of that knowledge.
Yeah, and halfway through, you're like, I don't even remember the past 3 slides or whatever. Maybe.
Yeah, especially if you've got ADHD, right? Such as myself. Whereas I think if we look at, and I think the big thing for us has been, how do we mimic how people choose to learn in their personal lives, in the corporate life? So that started with YouTube and LinkedIn. That's still very much part of it. Obviously, that kind of search part towards it is a lot of our learning starts off doing a Google search. These days, maybe more ChatGPT or Gemini and so forth. So I think for us, it's how do we stay relevant to how we choose to learn in our private lives and our home lives, and actually make that same feel in our corporate lives. So people are choosing to learn every day rather than when they're bullied to go and do an online course or into a classroom.
Yeah, I find it so awesome. And it's so interesting now that after speaking with so many people, everyone just wants to have more control of how they're learning and also what exactly they're learning to be able to obviously to have that connection with it. What do you think are some of the things that most corporations, most businesses are missing when it comes to being able to deliver the right way to learn for their employees, to make sure that it's not that old, boring corporate stuff where people are like just skipping through the slides and waiting for the timer to run through?
Well, I think first I start with the person who's in charge of it all, right? Because I think every business is ready for a technology like ours, right? They're already using similar type things elsewhere towards it. So normally it comes down to that person in that key role and the team, the head of learning, director of learning, and whoever they can influence, right? So I think that person's key. So a progressive person in that role, especially in today's environment, right? It's today's environment with AI that is accelerating the speed of innovation. It is kind of crazy, right? So if you've got probably a more on the change curve, someone on the second half of the change curve rather than the first half, that's probably the first part towards it, right? Someone that believes that they can make a dramatic difference and actually feel better about themselves, right? Because they're fulfilling the potential of their job by helping other people. Because I think every learning professional, face-to-face person or a technologist like myself, our joy, right? The true joy in our lives come from when you're seeing people blossom. You know, those comments on that YouTube channel for the kids to say, and now get this concept, 5 minutes my teacher's been trying to explain for the last 2 years. Those are the moments of joy that we get. So I think it's a super exciting moment, I think, inside the industry, because the suite of tools we now have and the speed of innovation just means there's undreamt of things we can now do. But you've got to have that open mindset, right? If you've got an open mindset, then it's a phenomenally exciting period of time going forward. And if you don't, then it's a bit scary.
Yeah, but it all starts at the top. It all starts at the top. That's so interesting. You mentioned any company is ready to have a technology like this. Is there a specific set of companies in which you guys really love to work with, in which you excelled? If I could only, like, if you had to pick, this is the ones that I really like to work with. Which one would that be?
And I think you're right. Look, it comes to, so people talk about learning cultures. There are certain company types or industries which is easier to have the type of learning culture where people learn every day, people contribute towards it, they're finding stuff, they're going towards stuff, versus that place where a lot of learning badly happens normally. And learning technology happens badly, and learning happens badly in companies. Most learning happens from the person next to you, right? So I don't know what I'm doing. Let me ask the person in the shop store next to me, or a WhatsApp group with 5 people in it, and the amount of wrong information that comes through from both those sources, that's where bad learnings happen and bad habits being taught. It's like me teaching my kid a sport that I'd never played before. It's going to be badly taught to my kid to do that, right? It doesn't mean I don't try, or we don't these days learn on YouTube and then use YouTube to teach our kids.
The effort's there, but the actual message coming across is no good.
So I think if you look at the extremes, right, where by nature people trust their employees more versus places where maybe it's highly regulated, which the regulation means they trust them less. So I think in places we love, so hospitality, retail, manufacturing, where you probably got a slightly, maybe a younger demographic on the workforce, a more open mindset towards, contribution, that I can contribute to the body of knowledge. I've been doing this job for a couple of years. I know how to demonstrate this new product. Somebody in a Hermes store, right, who's the perfect storyteller of that person, or a Cartier store, right? So there's amazing storytellers, and that's what you want to capture, and that's what everybody wants to learn from. And I think that those type of organizations are probably have the least amount of barriers to allow kind of a modern learning, holistic courses, plus informal, plus your TikTok, YouTube, ChatGPT style happen. And then maybe on the other side, right, it's probably big banking, is probably the extreme, right, where every single email is checked 4 times before it goes out. If you've got that type of regulation, big regulation, it's going to be really hard to have that dynamic learning culture that maybe people are less regulated able to have.
Yeah, interesting. And it's I like how you mentioned the demographic that's within these companies, like hospitality and things, because it sounds like it's so much more transferable to them, because it's like a seamless transition, right? They're so used to doing all these other things and other with all the other technology that exists. So it's like, hey, might as well do this the right way at work too.
I loved it. We had a client, one of our great clients. We recently helped them with this, right? So Levy Restaurants in the US, and we helped him, I think, spend literally 2 or 3 days just using our videography team to go and capture the best experts in the business doing everything from how to run P&Ls to how to make a hamburger to how to pour a drink. So everything is in a series of like 100 bite-sized videos. And then again, our technology, you're able to, for a new onboarder, they can come in, they go through that in a structured way to learn the stuff they need to learn. You've got that YouTube style stuff, that part that says I can watch the video on how to make the mojito, or how to do what's the best, how does the best person run a business in in a franchise store, all the way through to that more kind of question and answer. I'm stuck. What do I do? What's the best rum to use in a mojito in a Levy way? That type side, right? So I think it's bringing all those different ways that we learn
Hmm.
and recognizing at different moments, right? You're going to need different paths towards it
Yeah.
in order to give the option for the individual.
Yeah. Do you guys actually, let's say a new client comes on board, do you guys fly out a team to their exact location to be able to run all these things? Is that how?
We prefer to.
Hmm.
So yeah, and obviously I'm trying to get in a few of those, but they don't let me go anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think ideally, right, because
Uh-huh.
we are trying to transition our clients or transform our
Hmm.
clients from a traditional way of learning, which may be purely face to face or maybe
Mm.
traditional e-learning courses, to maybe a more modern way of learning that's in tune with their audience.
Hmm.
The actual learning team, it might be really new for them. So what we tend to offer is say, look, on the first new program, why don't we work with you side by side and transition this set of new skills so that you can video people, you can capture them,
Mm.
edit them, you can make them available in a formal structure, but informal structure, all index and so forth. So generally speaking, it's like, if you could co-design the first program together, then I look at the clients that have been with us for like 10 years. They're the ones that took that journey and learned those skills
Mhm.
themselves in those early stages.
It's interesting. It sounds like you're like setting them up with all the foundations that they need. So it's like the first one might be a little bit more, I want to say the word difficult, but a little bit more immersive. And then from there on, it's like
Big time,
everything is
right?
set. Everything is
Otherwise,
set.
you've got this amazing platform that can do all these modern, great ways to learn, bring your home life to your work life in terms of it. But if you take your 100-page, SharePoint slide deck or and operating procedure, or your 1 hour kind of health and safety course, and you put it on a YouTube platform, right? It's no one's going to view it. It's still the same
Hmm.
thing. You're still going to need to whip people and
Hmm.
and bully people to go do that. Versus
Hmm.
what you want is people to pull the
Hmm.
learning to do that. So yeah, part of our job we see is not simply sending people a platform and saying, go figure out yourself. And I mean, we do have a videos to explain how to.
Best of luck.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like say, let's hold your hand on that new journey, right? So that
Hmm.
first program is because once people do the first program, they go, oh my god, it's not that hard.
Mm.
But you imagine, right, going from writing a book to creating a playlist on YouTube,
Mm.
those are two different skill sets. And
Yeah.
until you've gone from writing a book, which is what most online courses are, to creating a playlist, it's
Mm.
once you do it the first time, you're like, actually, that wasn't too bad. That wasn't
Hmm.
hard towards it, but it seems like a really scary step before you've done it once.
Yeah. As soon as the exposure happens, they can't be unexposed. Like, oh, okay, done deal. So it's like,
It's like riding a bike, right? It's like
yeah.
trying to get your kids to ride a bike. It for them, it's crazy, but once they've done it, right, that's it, right?
Yeah,
Where we go.
that's so interesting. And I want to learn a little bit more about as you guys were growing. So maybe the first 3-5 years of the company. What were some of the challenges then, and how do they differ from the challenges that you guys face right now in the business?
Yeah, I think we mentioned before we came on board, right? So we went through a journey. The first 5 years are pretty meteoric, right? In terms of kind of 40%, 50% growth. Some years 100% growth towards that, and therefore that's a whole different bunch of challenges, right? The challenge is more there is like the people saying, I only had a pay increase 3 months ago. When's my next pay increase, right? So
Yeah.
it was a very different culture towards that, and we went through our initial funding, Series A, Series B, and then I think we made some strategic choice that were wrong. We thought when we got to this kind of like $10 million type mark, then what we then do is that we then bring in senior leaders from, bring in your Pelés and your Maradonas, your leadership team, right? Go and find the Pelé sales leadership and
Hmm.
operational leader and
Mm.
so forth. And so I took a step back at that time, yeah, as the superstars assembled.
Sure.
But then what we really, I guess, recognized and saw then was the culture gets lost, right? The
Mm.
purpose gets lost. The people that come into the business and maybe more coming in for the share options and to rather than the purpose, right? Which is
Sure.
not a bad thing. You want people to have both. But if
Yeah.
they're just about that and you've got
Mm.
5 leaders now that have come from Oracle, Salesforce, and
Hmm.
SAP, they don't understand the market. They don't understand the business. They don't have that. They're not in love with the problem,
Yeah. There wasn't
right?
an alignment. Yeah.
Well, I think if I look at the team now, right now that we've repaired that damage of a couple of years, right, because we had
Sure.
that because those people then recruit people like them,
Mm. Yeah.
and the people that are passionate and start up and are in love with the problem, right,
Hmm.
as I'm in love with the problem, which means you're sleeping every night trying to solve the learning industry problem, right, and technology like AI and everything else, that's just better ways to get there. But
Hmm.
we're dreaming about that. The people that care about and love the problem are continuously finding innovative ways to do it. But if you've got these guys that have come in that are just literally brought in to
Hmm.
scale the company, but don't love the problem and don't really understand the industry, then yeah,
Hmm.
that we suffered a lot from that, right? People confused. There ended up being two cultures: the kind of the people that cared about the problem,
Mm.
the people that didn't care. and then those people recruit people. A lot of good people left.
Yeah.
And then eventually we realized, oh my God, we need to jump back in again. By the time we jump back in again, you realize there's quite a lot of change to make. Even changing that senior leadership team, you still got another layer of people which they've recruited are their style of people. So yeah, it took us a couple of years really to, I think, to repair all of that damage and get back to a place where everybody loves the problem again, right? And we're driven by serving the client, getting joy from solving the problem and seeing the clients get the value from that.
Yeah, I'm assuming one. It sounds like a once the realization happens, you're like, how could we have like not seen this before, right? But as you're going through it, it's like it's a bit of a if it's a bit of a
You can look
you
at
have
it,
to
right?
go through it to like really see it.
Yeah, and I think at the time, but you look at it and say, well, it was new for me at the time, as getting to that kind of Series B, and then look at your next, you say, well, what you normally do here, Steve, because I've never been there before. So what you do now, you get these. We've got this. We're the investor. We've done this. We've got these successful.
Sure.
You need to follow the formula, the magic formula. Maybe I should have looked at the magic formula, which I still haven't seen, right? But they should. If I'd understood the magic formula, I might have questioned it, right? I just believe that, because they got so many portfolio companies, then they've got hundreds of millions and billions of dollars. I'm on board with the formula, and therefore I just need to sit back and see what happened. And that's the reality. I think that's a lesson learned that you want to pass to others, not to control up, at that early stage, and then see people that maybe don't have that same understanding of the market, the product, the problem. The challenges that then come from that.
Interesting. And how about now? How does that differ from what the business goes through now, and maybe the challenges that are happening currently for Fuse?
Yeah. So I think like I said, interesting now. If I look at our leadership team now, our leadership team is people that. So we've had about 12 to 15 people come back to the business.
Oh, wow,
once
awesome.
it changed, right? So I think we must have a boomerang record in our industry. What's going on there with this revolving door type thing? That so some of those amazing people have come in, and a lot of those amazing people either have come back in and come back to leadership positions, or the big thing for me now has been how do we grow our people upwards, right? Instead of going and finding Pele, Maradona, how do you grow that like Manchester United for those football fans, right?
Yeah, from back in the day, bring them from the base.
You grow your Scholes and your Beckhams and so forth, so that you've got this amazing people inside it. So I think that's much more a strategy now than it has been to go and find people from outside the industry that doesn't get that. And then I think so then that the leadership team works, right? So the leadership team likes each other. I think even trust each other, right? It's probably more than right? If they trust each other, and you all believe you're trying to solve the same problem, then I think everything beneath that comes in because you trust each other's advice. You listen. It doesn't mean you don't fight in a nice way, right? You have some friction that you have to feel that if you've got a difference in opinion, then people can raise that and say, Steve, I think you're wrong in that. I think you're bullshit. I think that's fine. And I've got to take that on board, respect where that's coming from because I trust that individual and listen to that and vice versa. So I think we have a lot of constructive conflict now, but we always hug it out at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome too because like at the end, like you said, you're going in the same direction anyways. Like the goal is the same. So it's like it's not like a matter of like who's right, who's wrong, but like how can we get there together? And if you're right, great. If I'm right, great. It doesn't really matter.
Well, I think there's a difference, right? I think the difference is if you've got those people that are passionate about the problem, right? You're all if there's a bit of disagreement, it's not coming from a personal thing, it's not coming from a political thing, right? It's coming from we just differ upon how to get that direction. But if I trust you, respect you, then I'm going to listen into you, even if I don't agree with you, and maybe we both come towards it. But versus if you've got maybe someone that's come in from a highly political environment, an SAP and Oracle, right? To survive as a senior person in those really big companies, especially in Europe, right, which is maybe not at the heart of the Silicon Valley type side, right? I think there's very different personalities, and I think we're not the only one that suffered maybe from bringing those higher profile individuals that are quite political. And in their mindset, their job is how do I get the person above me's job, right? So my job is to get that person fired or kicked out, right? Which is not the same as companies that are trying to start and scale.
No way. Steve, if I were to ask you, obviously the company has been doing great and there's so much success, many of the businesses that you guys have helped. If I were to ask you, what are the goals now for the company? And obviously I know like the impact and everybody that you want to help and all those things, but just in a company growth looking lens, what are some of the goals that you have moving forward?
Yeah, no, it's back to growth and growth profitability. So, I think everyone now is much more driven to profitability today than we were before. So this year, we should be in the next couple of months hitting sustainable profitability going forward. So that's been a big goal, right? That's been a big goal achieved by being smart on what we spend because I think during our Series B part, there were some crazy choices being made when it's not your money, right? I think people make crazy choices. So I think there's that part towards it. And obviously now it is about, sustaining that 30-40% growth year on year, in a profitable type way towards it. Those are the financial part towards it. And for us to obviously to maximize the opportunity that AI gets to us, because we got a little bit lucky, right? In that, because we did lose a couple of years, we could have really got behind. But AI, to some degree, kind of resets the playing field. Everybody in our industry starts again. We were lucky enough that we reassembled, this team at a time when AI just hit it, a couple of years back. Yeah. So we're great, smart people who are in love with the problem. We've managed now to get ourselves to a tech leadership position. So our big challenge now is, now we do have a tech leadership position again. How do we make sure the marketplace knows about that, sees that, and that hits those growth and profit improvement?
Awesome. And that kind of leads me perfectly into my next question, which is a question that I've been asking everybody, because I think it allows them to just think without like putting any ceilings on it. So if you had a magic wand or a magic button, whatever you want, whatever your magic of choice, but you could just press that button, wave that wand, and it could just solve one thing within the business, maybe a challenge, maybe an obstacle, whatever it might be that would allow you to hit all of the growth goals that you have. What would that one thing be for the business? Even though there are often many.
I mean, I guess for us, right? Well, be careful what I say here, right? So,
yeah, of course, yeah, all good.
No, I think honestly, I think when you have a board of investors, some have been with us a long time and had a great ride. Some of that have come in later and then go through that period where it didn't work. I think the thing is we need to realign at that level, and therefore make sure that funding requirements and alignment to the board filters down. So it's great we have a leadership team that's really aligned. But I think when you do go through those bumps, in your Series A, Series B and seed funding, and then at some point there's a misalignment at the board level and shareholder level, I think that's the stuff that I would love to. I'd love the shareholder board to be as aligned as the leadership team were in trying to drive at that goal, right? And awesome. But I do understand why, because people come in at different places towards it, and then some people blame each other for the part where we were plateauing. And I'm sure now in the success period, they're all going to be clapping each other on the back in terms of what great job they've done.
Yeah, for sure. Steve, I have one final question for you. And it's not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest. And they had no idea who you were. So ready for the question?
Go for it.
The question is, if there is one world problem you could solve with this or your next business, what would it be?
Well, like I said, I think we're directly in towards that, right? So with the charity we have, and obviously we started the charity by digitizing the secondary school education system and having kids towards that. I think that was a great step, right? So to me, and to some degree, I feel that phase of the project we've now done, where we're reaching 10 million kids a year. That's phenomenal. We've used AI to translate that content into Hindi and Spanish and other places, so we have that reach. But I look at the opportunities, and that's freely available for the world, which is brilliant, right? I think outside of that, with the technology that's now available that wasn't available when we started that journey 10 years ago, obviously with the use of AI and platforms like ourselves, I think in the background is that question of how do you 10x that, right? How do you create that impact because the purpose of the charity was always driven towards how do you give children initially in developing countries the opportunity of that we get, right? And how do you bridge that divide in education so that my initial vision for that was that a kid in a private school in London will be accessing the same education as a kid in a developing country, in a village, right? And I think we've seen that happen. So we've seen it happen on a smaller scale. And my kids have come back from my school and say, "Daddy, they're using the videos, your videos from Few School inside it." Immensely. And at the same time, we work with a charity called Hello World to actually drop ship with drones, iPads, the content, configuration of how to set it up in a village with no internet and no internet towards there, but the local internet provider connected kind of Wi-Fi type, style signal towards it, cellular type stuff. Exactly. And that's amazing, right? Because you've got 1,000 people in the village that had not access to the education information and they're accessing our content. We can see in every country in the world our content is being used, and I see it's being used by my local school. So to some degree, I think, okay, phase one is done. We want to continue to scale that. But now with the technologies available, I think it's all about, we can now take it up 2, 3, 4, 5 levels. And if I look at the level of personalization that's now possible, with that part towards it, it's the journey we're now on. It's a journey in our corporate platform, but I think it's also the journey for our charity. How do you truly understand each individual as much as possible, but now know those variables can exist in the platform to then personalize the experience, whether that someone is, what language they're learning, their neurodiversity, their moment of need type preference towards that. All those things we can now use to help the individual in a way that's motivating and engaging. Because if an individual or kid or an adult, right, is disengage with learning because the method's not working for them,
Hmm.
that's not their fault, right? It's just
Yeah.
that the system's not working for them.
Mhm.
What's phenomenally amazing today, right, is the system could morph itself in accordance with the personality in the moment,
Yeah.
the individualism of each person, and that's a that's just made the problem a whole lot more exciting to solve.
Awesome. Steve, thank you so much for your time. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you sharing all those insights, the conversation. Where can people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you or maybe a little bit more about Fuse?
Yeah, I mean, Fuse is fuseuniversal.com, nice and forward. And yeah, LinkedIn, probably the best way inside me. So just Steve Dineen on LinkedIn is an easy way to follow the profile or send a direct message.
Amazing. Again, thank you so much, Steve. This has been awesome. Thank you.
It's a joy. It's a joy. Thank you so much.